So we are in your U.S. history book. We're in chapter 6, and we're going to be talking about the War for Independence. The first section is the American attempts at reconciliation. I like this quote here that's in your book that says, "Here English law and English thought 'gainst the self-will of England fought." So here we have that English law and English thought in America actually bringing forth their heart for freedom and liberty and independence. So you can see some of these pictures. This is the Liberty Bell that's in Independence Hall in Philadelphia. Onto, the Revolutionary Wars you see going here and the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so let's get going. The colonists at first tried to avoid war. They gave forth what is called the Olive Branch Petition from the Bible, trying to make peace with England. The Second Continental Congress made the last-minute attempts here to this Olive Branch Petition on July 1775 to King George III. And it was drafted by John Dickinson and later on with Thomas Jefferson too. Basically saying, "We, your majesty, faithful subject, entreat your majesty's gracious attention to this our humble petition. Devotion becoming most dutiful subjects and most affectionate colonists." Basically giving forth, that compliance, non-compliance, actually that submissive non-compliance, like you see in the Bible, especially in the book of Daniel, saying, we will submit to you, but we cannot comply to some of these things. So we'll see what happens. But this happened actually in July. Sorry, let's move in here. In July of 1775. The Declaration of the Causes and Necessity of Taking Up Arms. It was drafted by, again, John Dickinson and Thomas Jefferson, and it had in it a reverence for our great Creator, the principalities of humanity and common sense, and that government was instituted to promote the welfare of mankind. And this attempt to cruel and impolitic purpose of enslaving these colonies by violence, to render necessary for us to close with the last appeal from reason to arms. Basically saying, this is our last resort, and we don't want to pick up arms. We don't want to arm ourselves and go to war at all. So please answer us, because we have been treated very cruelly by you. And you have enslaved and taken away our liberties. So this was the declaration they gave to England, to Great Britain. You can see here basically the taking up arms and the declaration that they went, the declaration to take up arms. The plea to Great Britain. They also gave a history of America up to that point. They enumerated injustices inflicted upon the colonies by Great Britain, especially recently. And we went over those in the last section. And they resolved to take up arms and defend American liberty. It did not at this point mean that they were embracing the idea of actual independence. They didn't say they didn't have a Declaration of Independence. They just declared that they were going to take up arms if this went this way, in this direction. But they pledged this resistance until Parliament abandoned its unlawful rule in America. Basically, the Parliament was giving all these rules and regulations and license and taxings and all these things that were going on to make life horrible for the colonists, and basically saying, abandon your unlawful rule. But would they? Here's a picture of here. Of course, we see Benjamin Franklin here, Thomas Jefferson, but they're saying the plea goes on to Great Britain. But Great Britain ignored the pleas for peace by America. Here we have this picture of King George there, and he rejects the olive branch petition proposed by the Continental Congress. And on to the royal proclamation of rebellion. We'll find out what. So King George III and Parliament refused to listen to America at all, and they were determined to bring them into total subjection. On August 23rd, 1775, King George issued what's called the Proclamation of Rebellion, basically saying Americans are in open and vowed rebellion against Great Britain. And he gave a call to military and civil officers, basically to aid and to their subjects to aid and assist in a war with the United States of America, a war with the colonists, to suppress such a rebellion, basically saying that now America they've threatened to take up arms, and so they are in rebellion against Great Britain. He put forth what was called the Prohibitory Act on December 1775. This was the King George III. The Prohibitory Act, the Parliament of the Kings urging this issues to prohibit them, basically means that they barred all trade with American colonies, and they included confiscating all of their ships, any American ships, and removing all of British protection for the colonies. So basically, we're not protecting you anymore. We're going to remove our ships from there, and we're going to bar any trade. We're going to prohibit you from going into war. So here we have the picture here. This here again, this being the prime minister here, and this being the king coming against America. The broken contract, the last resort. So now the last resort has happened. John Adams and others point out that King George III has now broken his contract with America. All of his charters, anything to do with Great Britain and the king, now has broken it. So this now, as John Adams said, relieves all allegiance to the King of Great Britain, the King of England. Now the colonies will be forced to fight for their independence. King George then did the last resort, but he hired Hessian troops from Germany, mercenaries. Mercenaries are hired troops to come in and go into America and kill Americans at war. So he hired troops. You wonder why he had to hire troops? Because there are a lot of Englishmen that didn't want to go to war with America. So he hired mercenaries. So here's a picture of the German troops that he hired to come into America to fight against the colonists. The Hessian troops arrived on American shores. This alarmed and infuriated the colonists, saying, "The king has sent mercenaries in to go to war with us." They were totally alarmed and totally infuriated against what he had done, like the last resort, right? Common sense. Well, common sense would be, you'd think common sense would be going to war. But Common Sense was a pamphlet that was written prior to this time, in January of 1776. Thomas Paine, this guy, he was an Englishman in America for only 2 years. But he put these pamphlets out, and it was perfect timing, and thousands of them circulated in America. In the Common Sense, he argued against this inherited monarchy and Britain's claim to authority over America. And he said it's common sense for America to declare independence now. The timing of his pamphlet was perfect due to King George's act of tyranny, especially hiring Hessian troops, German troops to come in. By mid-year, many Americans were now ready for independence, as this had been the last resort. So we're going to stop there, and I'm going to go on to the next section in just a little bit.